The necessity of being you. Something I was able to discover, especially after last week. We were talking a lot about the shame in relationship to desire. And, well, there's a lot of shame also in relationship to you being you. To understand the importance of authenticity is a little bit deeper than just the terminology. And I might not use that word very much. I'm not going to use that word very much because I think it's kind of fallen into the gutter of a bunch of other words that are overused and mean nothing at this point. And I want to be able to explain the necessity of being connected to yourself. Now, this is much more than just awareness. I believe it's actually the fundamental connection to our humanity that we all think we have, that we actually really don't have. And I feel like, even the movie Ice Age was something I was just talking about with my my media manager, and it was quite rich. And, well, what's it really about? We see the humanity of the characters clearly because we're the viewers. But, I think in a lot of ways, we become so disconnected from who we are as a person. And the person is always far more compelling than what that person individually tells themselves they need. And I noticed that to be true because I saw that in one of my friends, and he isn't just one of my friends, he was one of my very close friends, one of the reasons why I was here, why I am here, being able to do this and to be able to do it from a place that I understand to be necessary. And I use that word, the necessity of you. So what you could see in the Ice Age film, because it's very cute, of course, but when you watch it, you're kind of left with a lingering feeling of this spoke to something deeper. This wasn't just a kid's film. And that's cool. I can get behind that. And when I recognized really what it was the fundamental nature that was manifested across Diego, Manny, Sid. And there's a foolish-like nature of Sid, foolish enough to actually be able to connect with mankind because he was the first one to look at the kid and go, Manny, we can't leave him behind. You ever think about the responsibility of living your life? You kind of need to be a fool in order to do so. Well, then Manny, he's determined to go somewhere. So you're going to need to have that head-forward charge. And perhaps maybe a little bit of the dualistic nature or the capacity of a saber-tooth in order to get past some of the most vicious of fights. Well, because of course he's the one that saves the day at the end of it. He has the aspect of himself that was completely and totally self-serving, but he's able to jump in front of the falling icicle. Now, you're probably saying, how do I remember this film backwards and forward? I probably watched it 500 times when I was 6. So growing up, I'm able to look back at these memories and experience something deeply profound. At the end of the movie, what do you really see? The humanity that they all found themselves connected to, being embodied in the child. Now, the child is something interesting because I'm sure you've heard about it. Maybe you've kind of picked up on the whole psychological notion of the inner child, and it is the manifestation of your past, your present, and your future. It is the constant evolution of who you are, and if you are disconnected from this part of you, then play is nothing more than a means to an end. And if play becomes a means to an end, it's not really play, is it? It's leverage, it's tactic. And I found something to be one of the most important things in my life, and it's really what it is to play. Connecting to yourself is not something that you think is through the guises of a self-help book or even through these videos. I really just want to be a representation of what that play looks like because I'm doing it right now. Maybe you might think I'm reading something or I've had a whole big thing planned. Actually, no. I'm just willing to play every damn time, and sometimes when I feel like a little afraid to play, I forget the very reason of why I'm here to play to begin with. It's something there for me. It's always been there for me. And a disconnect from the self is when you are disconnected from an understanding that this is all for you. The nihilistic idea that something lacks its significance if there's no outcome in it is exactly what diminishes play being one of the most transcended concepts and also applicable practical solutions to so much of what weighs on our shoulders. So one of my friends, one of the very reasons that's why I was here, when I was 22, I just remembered falling into the most rigid version of myself. And the worst part is I didn't have friends. I had people that tolerated me. I tolerated me, if barely tolerated me. I dealt with me like a drill sergeant would deal with a problem. I felt like I was the idiot child I wanted to run from. There was nothing but shame surrounding everything that I am. And these points maybe sound reoccurring if you've watched some of these videos, but I feel like sometimes I can go deeper with them. And it's because they deserve it. It's the universality of this story and this message is really what brings us all together. I have seen the necessity of the self because years have went by actually since I was with this friend of mine, and I've spoken about it before in one of my other videos in the past. Yet I wanted to be able to build off of it because it was something that inspired me, and inspired me to recognize that even the progression of these videos and the future of even my career and the way that I speak has never been seen before. But that's just not just true, not even for my profession. My profession is outside of its identity, if you really think about it. In order to drive anything towards maximum capacity, you need to be willing to let go of whatever identification it was held onto. in order for it to be seen as truly what it is. Now, I was really close with this one friend, and he showed me what it is to go to Neverland, to never grow up. But he also showed me what it is to be tapped into genius and greatness. And it was all through one thing, it was all through play. There's a zone that people get locked into, a zone that I've been in very, very recently. And it's the zone where I don't find myself needing to perform. I don't find myself needing to be someone. I find myself living. I think of the richness of that because there's just nothing that gets more in the way of our life than really ourselves. When we say ourselves, it's just everything that we just don't want to interact with because, it might get in the way of your life, but of course it continues to persist. We want love, we want connection, and I know for certain that we want to be able to see our handiwork in the world do good. I could say that's true for most people, not for everyone. Some people just want to see it burn. I had my brother's birthday, and it was a very significant point in my life. I might even give a little bit of a backstory of my relationship with that friend. I was a very depressed person at that point in my life. Well, I would be too if I gave up on every dream that I had, and I put aside every single desire, and I told myself this is who I am, and if I just wait as this person that I am, I'll be given something. Yeah, I'll tell you what I would have been given. What I saw my brother got married to. That's what I would have been given. And so, of course, me trying to keep my dick between my legs, for use of a better word, trying to stop me from interacting with the curiosities of life and all of the desire that I had for it, because my desire was so heavy, and it was a desire I've had my whole life. That friend that I'm speaking about, he's somebody who I've known for years, ever since I was a kid. I noticed how people bullied him. He had such a voice. And what a soul, and what a sensitivity and a care for others. He was afraid, yeah, reasonably afraid. Well, he didn't want people to leave him for what he is, so he'd take what he is and he'd use it as a way to get people to stay. Despite that, even growing up, I recognized how much we loved playing with each other. Because when we did, we were in the world of that play. And somehow that gets us connected to parts of ourselves that were so deep. And when we were younger, when we were actually kids, and he's one of the very few childhood friends that I still have to this day, and don't think this isn't going to be a tragic story, because there's a lot of tragedy in this story. There's been years where we've been separated from each other, and I've honestly felt I was separated from that part of me. It's interesting to see how these things all come back together, because when it did come back together, it brought me closer to the very thing that I believe there needs to be a necessity of, and I only believe that through this story will you guys understand that. Growing up, we used to play a lot of Nazi zombies. And a lot of what we would do is we would act like we were the Twitch streamers. Of course, we didn't have a Twitch streaming thing at the time. We'd have to play on split screen because, that was ancient history when you guys both had to share one TV. And, we'd play for hours, and it was really just social commentary that we would have over the video game as an excuse to just make the most bombastic jokes to each other about what the game is, as we're also playing into these characters. But really, we're not just playing into these characters, there's a sense of comedy. And I think for everybody that understands something about comedy is that there's a deep kind of genius in those who are willing to play around with whatever kind of comedy they have access to, and it manifests differently for each person. Into high school, I recognized that this was somebody who, oh my God, he just wanted to have the validation of other people, really insecure. Well, that's going to be true for sensitive people. Yet still, under the perfect circumstances or the better circumstances, I would recognize something. He always stayed true to himself. He never rejected the part of himself that was very, potentially to a lot of people, loud, annoying, very expressive, and funny. He never turned that volume down. It got him into a lot of trouble, got him kicked out of a lot of homes. But I also saw something so interesting of how misunderstood that was, because he wasn't really doing it because he was doing it for the sake of just being a pain in the ass. Not many people are aware that there's a tremendous vulnerability in expression of the self. An expression of the self is the one thing that can be hurt, judged, or criticized due to its massive capacity. Yes, there's a tremendous capacity behind the self. Let me tell you about the self. The self is the very thing that makes you look at Robert Downey Jr. and go, whoa, he didn't play Iron Man. He is Iron Man. It's the very thing that makes you look at Robin Williams and go, that's a special soul. It's the very thing that makes you listen to Frank Sinatra's voice and go, that's a freak. That is angelic. It's also the very thing that makes you look at art and recognize, how can somebody ever do something like that? Well, the truth is that they don't even believe that they could. They just give it a shot. They just live as a kind of person that's willing to do something as outrageous as some of the greatest works of art that you've seen, or even be willing to take step towards some of the greatest literature I've ever read. For those who maybe have read a good book or have seen a good movie, you ever kind of think about, wow, that was really ambitious. How did you execute it? Not only did you execute it, it stood the test of time. Again, people connected to the self. When connected to the self, you're left with only the absolute insane idea to pursue that very thing. The self isn't concerned of whether or not it will or it won't. It just has a desire for effort. That effort and the best efforts are truly where you see that what was always true about you, being loved for who you are, is seen and recognized. There's a lot of point in my life where even he would look at me and he told me, hey, we're like playing video games. We're having a really great time. I could see how connected you are to yourself. And I'd look at him and go, I don't want to be here. I don't want to be here. And I remember I was 16, 17 when this happened. It's like, I want to be at the next party. I want to be at the next music festival. I want to enjoy or experience all of these things. Years go by. I go into a relationship. He was probably one of the only people who saw me go into this relationship. And it was funny, you could already tell if somebody's bad for you based off of them trying to separate them from people that bring out the part of you that is most capable. Truth be told, play is a dangerous game, but it's still play nonetheless. It can be dirty, it can be harsh, it could be tender, it could be soft, yet it's still play. And there's a big spectrum of it. And I like to see something as play as the connection to the self and a connection to not only an understanding of how necessary it is, but also how healing it is. There's a healing component to it. And I've noticed this to be for people that if they don't know how to interact or to play, then they feel so distant from the part of himself that can create, that can connect. And almost all connection no longer becomes connection, it becomes transaction. The purpose of play is to interact with something that you unlock within you throughout the process of that. This was the big relationship I was in. One of the very few people who got to see that whenever I saw him in the relationship, I felt closer to myself. And that relationship was a dark place to be in because I felt further and further away from me. There were very few people I could be me around. I had to show everybody that I was strong, that I wasn't afraid, that nothing wrong was happening here, that my decisions were perfect whoopee-doo. I was in hell. And I'll tell you what hell is. Everything that you are is now used as a nice little mask to convince everyone else you're okay. And every time I'd see him, my girlfriend at the time would get super angry. Oh, he's super loud, he's super this. But I would notice that every time I spent time with him, I would be loud, I would express myself. And well, it's interesting, the guy with the voice, the guy who loves to speak. Well, you gotta be with somebody who's willing to say the most ridiculous shit. If maybe you wanna find something in you that's worth giving. And I recognize the kind of strength in those that can do that. Things have gotten dark. Of course they have. And, after coming out of that relationship at that time, because I had complete amnesia after that, I remember I lost my taste and smell after that relationship. And yeah, a lot of those memories went out the window too. And it was almost like bumping into him later, there wasn't really a connection. Until one day I became the manifestation of everything my protective mechanisms wanted me to be. Seen as strong, and that I'd know it all and have it all under control. Guess what? Nobody ever tended me, neither did I. I would suffer silently. And my misery was far too great to share, because I believed that would push away people too. So why would I even open that door? Keep surviving. The sadness was deep, and so was the shame. The shame was so deep. And the shame was everything that would at least maybe require me to be seen and misunderstood and rejected. I was 22 years old when I saw my brother get married to his wife. This was one of the most impactful lessons of my life. I feel that a lot of ways, actually being able to just kind of change the thought. I almost feel like I couldn't even talk about this until I was able to reconnect with this person recently in my life. I felt that, in a lot of ways, because they were gone, I lost the experience. And I recognize that was the biggest disservice I ever did to myself. Is that sometimes feeling the loss of something allows you to not have to lose all of the love that they gave you with it. And sometimes miracles do happen, people do come back together. Yet, if you have the courage to at least experience that loss, you can live with what it was given. What was given. Because you're going to actually hear the stories of how I lost my friends today. A lot of friends. Because, we talk about the connection to the self, and the people are like, well, if I actually did that, I'd have nobody around me. You're probably right. Yet you still connect. And that's how valuable this is. I want you to recognize the necessity of this. It's not even an option, it's a necessity. You don't recognize the necessity of such great works of art until you experience it. The necessity of music, the necessity of dance, the necessity of art, the necessity of connection, the necessity of somebody connected to the self. It's far beyond your even own understanding of what that is. When you see it, you'll know. Sometimes when you are it, you'll recognize you have no other alternative than to just maybe follow the steps, follow the path of the direction you chose to step in, even if you drag your feet. So I saw my brother got married and I recognized, I can't live like this. I have to be connected to this very thing. And it was actually something that we were both very adamant about. It was me and him, and we both said, no, not this girl. No, not this guy. Well, 2 weeks later, that changed. When we started playing with each other, interacting with each other honestly and authentically, I remember giving him a call and I told him, I said, hey, how you been? He's like, not good. And I said, same. Come to the gym, let's work out. At the time I was a trainer. And some of the most vicious things have came to my life at that point in life. I had to accept my life as it is, like it would never change. And I know that most people think that that's prison. That's the beginning of freedom. It's freedom of what there is and perhaps what you cannot change, and an acceptance of what you can. So I faced it head on. I remember giving him a big hug and I told him, I said, I'm not going to be like your other friends. You're going to have commitments that you're going to stick to. And we're going to do something that's going to change the world. Well, there's a little bit of me coming up to the surface. You could almost hear it, even in the way that I spoke, because back then I wasn't aware of this. If I told you that this was a reality, I'd probably say that you're crazy. Not like this. It can't be that good. It can't be that real. It can't be that true. But I had sparks that would go in and out, and that was more than enough. You have to believe in those little sparks, because then they catch flame, and that flame can spread quick if you're willing to fan it. And we need that light. It's quite dark. The light that I'm talking about is not the light of contrast. You see the difference between the light that's on my face or perhaps maybe the darkness that's in my shirt. No, I'm talking about the very thing that is the sum total of both. The light that we understand to be in the image of the divine, that light. You know how necessary that is? Well, that's a reminder that beauty is eternal and that goodness is you in this world for eternity too. We need to know that that's true. I give my friend a hug and I tell him, I said, here's what we're gonna do. You're gonna hit the gym, you're gonna quit the drinking, you're gonna go out every night. And here's also what we're gonna do. We're gonna play Halo 2. Well, that was my idea. Interacting with core memories. Well, the core memories that will really change you if you start interacting with what surrounded your core memories. It's been a reoccurring story because I really want to show you the absolute insanity of this being relevant to my life right now, to be at what I'm actually trying not just to speak to, but trying to also embody. Doing my very best at that. I accepted my clients as they are. I didn't want to leave. I love them. I said, if this is my life, then this is my life. I know what I wanted to start doing. Well, then maybe I could start at least taking small steps in that. Picking up on the reading that I didn't have, but also picking up on the playing that I never did. It was so funny. I remember it was like, read Dale Carnegie, How to Win Friends and Influence Them, or play Halo 2. I made the right choice. It was not Dale Carnegie. And that's the whole thing that I'm recognizing about the zone, or this flow, or this kind of connection, or the self, is it's far beyond intellect. It's called genius. Genius is what changes the world. Most people who are smart can't think themselves out of a fucking plastic bag that they got themselves into. And so I recognize that this has nothing to do with intellect. And my friend was definitely a reflection of that. Not saying that he isn't intelligent, but he was always mistaken for being an idiot. Which is so interesting is that now people look to him as not so much that, and neither do they look to me for me being the same thing. Through going out every night, dressing the way that I wanted to dress for the first time, not in joggers and a wife beater, maybe a suit from Armani. And he would support me in these decisions. Well, he was foolish enough to support me in these decisions because, that's an expensive suit and you don't have the kind of money for that. But looking back at it, I can get everybody a suit for themselves in my whole home. But these decisions weren't just decisions because I think that was the embodiment of somebody who has faith in their life, is that they're willing to play. I knew it wasn't running. Hell, I saw what running looks like. It looked like my brother's marriage. I didn't want that. Well, maybe play is running too. But in the midst of running too, throwing away what you tell yourself you are. It's the highest form of surrender. And we'd go out every night. I'd meet new people. I would speak to people without this kind of idea of who I am, and so much natural ability was coming up that I could read people's minds, and I was very much an intuitive type, and so is he. We would go play I'd play my favorite video game, a video game I've had so many core memories around, and we would play till 3 a.m. in the morning, and we'd end that off with a McDonald's swirl. I fell in love too. And he also got to see me fall in love. And I recognize that it's not bounding, it's not freaky, it's not terrifying. Well, when you're connected to your feelings, it's not a game of the mind, is it? It's a game of the heart. And I recognize how brave I really was. Because when my mind started taking over, I started becoming really neurotic. We were hanging out with each other every day for 6 months straight. He saw, and it was something interesting, when I put down the controller of beating Halo 2, I knew what I wanted to do. It's very much this. And it was clear, I could see it. The girl I was with at the time, it was difficult, but I ended the relationship. I've never ended a relationship before in my whole life. I'd usually let a relationship go until I watched myself become the monster as I ripped the person apart. This mystic that I'm describing here was my ability to surrender to life and interact with the very things that brought my enthusiasm, and that I live with that kind of enthusiasm for my own self-amusement. You don't know how brave it is in order to start interacting with that part of you, because that part of you would make you a selfish son of a bitch. Now, that's a very important part of yourself to interact with, because you're forgetting nobody laughs at your jokes but you, and you're entitled to the things that make you laugh. So why is it you rob yourself of that too? As we started hanging out with each other, there has been arguments around a lot of his, at the time, he didn't want to continue growing. It was no bad blood between us, but we definitely stopped talking. We stopped spending time with each other. I told him, hey, you're more than welcome to come over and hang out. Just don't bring that stuff here. Well, I pursued this, and he pursued what he was pursuing, and he achieved a lot of success in that too. There was another friend of mine that I thought I would be a friend for the rest of my life, because he was somebody that I never thought would be envious of my success. What was really interesting is the one that had none of this success or any of the sports cars was the one person that doesn't flinch when they see mine. It's been 3 years since the story I'm telling you. And it was my brother's birthday. How many days ago? About 7 days ago. I haven't seen him since. Also around my brother's birthday was also the day that he got married 3 years ago. So it's been 3 years since those times. It's been 3 years since he's been married. It's also been 3 years since I've been close with that one friend. And when I was looking at him at the restaurant, I wanted to describe you something that I've never seen before. When I was looking at him, I saw somebody that was so connected to themselves and what they were doing in their life. But the very steak that he ordered, the way he spoke to the waiter, the jokes that he was making in his head about the things that were happening, and the way that he would speak to people was not just completely empty of himself. He was constantly entertained throughout the whole process in a way that wasn't destructive, but necessary. And I was moved so deeply because when I continued to look at him, I didn't just see him. I saw the necessity of being connected to the self. And this was a very, very important part of my life that I was struggling with for the last couple weeks. And it was, how can I take this forward? How can I be a pioneer with this? I have so much information to just kind of recycle it, but I noticed one thing is that if I go back there, I die there. And then everything about me that needs to grow beyond that doesn't exist. So as I look at my friend, I recognize that belief. It was the very thing that actually made me get here. What do you think's going to make me get to where I really want to get? Is it going to be the philosophy of regurgitated information? And I'll tell you about one of my friends who's very big on regurgitating information. He was the one friend that didn't accept me when I stepped into actually speaking the truth. He envied me for it, and he was the one with everything that had something to his name. And the one who didn't, shockingly, was somebody who wanted me to win because he knew he had it too. Don't be fooled by what people have. You have to start really understanding by those connected to themselves and to the self of who they are the ones you could always trust. Because you have to recognize something, that they're the very people that are in this world that not only make it worth living, are the very reminder that you are here with a purpose. That purpose screams to much more than just you have something to do so that you don't have to be a nihilist. It's much deeper than that. It's almost an opportunity. It's an opportunity for an expression of something that is unique and everlasting. A very embrace of what we are and a confirmation that it is good. You're given a chance to show that in this world. And not many people are willing to even give themselves the same chance. I recognize the difference between an identity and somebody who's connected to themselves. An identity is everything that's ugly about a human being. Because it's the sum total of all of the information that they've gathered to avoid all of the painful experiences. It's not a person. It's an automation. I know most people because I know their habits, and I don't let those habits be a disservice to the person, because the person is far more compelling and tells a story that is truthfully defined. When we see it in people, I know something to be true, that God did make his creation good. And if that's the case, what's that saying about my life? That day, not only did we make up as friends, we were invited to crash a wedding. We used to do that all the time. Where was the wedding at? The same hall that my brother got married. And I was struggling in the last couple of weeks with it. And I was saying, like, what's it going to take in order for people to maybe understand what I'm saying? Because I know what it's like to be misunderstood, but I also recognize that I can't continue doing what worked. It'll never work. I've seen so many people take what they have of themselves and they go, wait, this creates this? Well, now it's my shrine. And then they lose everything that made it compelling to begin with. And it becomes forgotten. And it was also that they wouldn't be forgotten. And I recognized, well, what's this underlying shame? And it was something that I was experiencing. And it was something that I saw he lived without. He didn't live with the shame around the self. And I did. Because I had a dream. Actually, I think it was a day before I even bumped into him. And it was of my friend that invited me to speak at his events. And in this dream, he told me, what is your passion? What is your greatest purpose? I said, to speak. That's my purpose. And with envy, he responds, no, it's not. To give you a little bit of an understanding that when I did speak at his events, and I did speak with all of my heart and all of my soul, and I spoke beyond what was in the status quo. I spoke beyond what was in the comprehension of what is known. And I took a dive so deep into the unknown as I spoke. And sometimes when I speak, that's where I go. And that's why I seek to do it. It's almost like it's for me. And when I did, the crowd went silent. I did too, because I knew I was in trouble. Typically, what we don't understand, we tend to reject. My friend did that because I know how it made him feel. I know he's going to be okay. There's a lot of sadness in the loss of that. But I also recognized that I don't need to live with a double loss. Maybe I did lose my friends, but I'm not going to lose the part of myself that's willing to reach for horizons that I didn't know I could ever reach. When I saw my friend that night, I felt that flame reignite in my soul. And I started recognizing that a zone that we have to create from is going to be the very willingness to maybe be crazy enough to even reach for a horizon so large. What I learned from all of this is that if you were to have shame from the expression that you need to give to the world, maybe you're disconnected from the necessity of it. This isn't just true for what's going to help you as a foundation for every relationship that you'll be in your life. It's going to help you for every relationship that you're going to build along the way and the kind of person that you're going to become too. This will be something that will never change, and the person that you are will.